Welcome to Broadcast Advocate, a podcast from NASBA, the National Alliance of State Broadcasters Associations, where we discuss the latest news, trends, and stories impacting the world of broadcast radio and television. Broadcast Advocate is presented by Local Broadcast Sales, on-demand sales training and revenue development services that work nationwide. Visit them at localbroadcastsales.com. I'm your host, Chris Winkle, president of the Kentucky Broadcasters Association, and I am joined today by my dear friend and co-host.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, I'm Wendy Paulson. I'm president of the Minnesota Broadcasters Association. As hundreds of radio and television broadcasters set their sights on Washington, D.C. for the annual State Leadership Conference, which is led by the National Association of Broadcasters, we're joined by two gentlemen that play a very significant role in broadcasters' advocacy's agenda in Washington, D.C. NAB's Executive Vice President of Government Relations, Shawn Donilon, and NAB Radio Board Member, Director of Government Affairs for Salem Media Group, as well as Vice President of Public Policy for the National Religious Broadcasters, and fellow Minnesotan, Nick Anderson. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for allowing us to be here.
Shawn, if we could get started with you. While the NAB, State Broadcasters Associations, and our individual radio and television members advocate for the industry throughout the year, can you tell the audience, many of whom may not have attended SLC, why the NAB holds the State Leadership Conference and why it's so important to the industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. This really is the marquee advocacy event of the year for the broadcasting industry. NAB is proud to organize it and grateful for the State Association partnership and really helping execute it. And as you mentioned, we're here in DC. You can see behind me, day in and day out, telling broadcasters' story, making all the policy points, darkening everyone's doorstep on Capitol Hill and in the administration. But what makes the fly-in so important is the participation of broadcasters who are in local communities in all 50 states, bringing their perspective, telling their story about what's happening in the media marketplace. How is that informing and creating urgency for changes to outdated regulations? You know, how is their local radio station serving communities during a recent major crisis or natural events? So this is just a really important way. Every other one of our competitors would want to have this type of fly-in and grassroots activity, right? Think of like a data center trade association. You know, they're not bringing in huge warehouses and equipment. Our industry gets to bring in really the people, the heart of our industry, to help tell the story and connect with policymakers. And we're so grateful for those willing to do it.
We're looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Shawn. So, Nick, before we dive into the specific issues that broadcasters face in today's media landscape, what are your thoughts on our overall advantages when it comes to our advocacy?
Well, broadcasters are trusted voices, Wendy. You know, we're in every congressional district that's in throughout the country, and I tell members of Congress all the time, broadcasters are credible. If you want to know how your local economy is doing, pick up the phone. I tell them, pick up the phone, call your local GM at a TV station or at a radio station, and they're going to tell you how the local economy is doing on two fronts. They're going to tell you how it is from the local economy on how many cars the car dealer's selling, how many roofs the roofers put on, how many new prospective members or clients have come into the financial advisory firm. But they're also going to tell you about how the business is going for them because they're managing their, the broadcasters managing their P&L. We employ people. We buy products and services locally. We host events and promotions like back to school events and Christmas gift giving and a bunch of other things that really shine a light on our community. And so, we are the story. We tell the story, but we also live the story every single day.
Excellent. So there's two major issues that are facing our radio broadcasters. The first one is the ongoing effort to ensure radio, particularly AM radio, remains in all vehicles sold in the United States. So what can you tell us about the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act and where it stands today?
Yeah, at its core, the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act protects public safety and the public safety backbone that is AM radio, and it also protects free over-the-air broadcast radio to make sure it stays in the dash and is accessible to the next generation of car buyers and drivers. You know, AM remains the critical footprint or foundation for the emergency alert system, right? The backbone. So emergency communications, FEMA, state emergency managers, police chiefs, fire chiefs, EMTs, a whole bunch of third-party partners. Oh, it's like over 200 or 300 that are in the public safety environment have already said this is important to have. When other technologies fail, AM radio is the one consistent. And you know, other technology is good, but the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act maintains a redundancy for our communication ecosystem. And so the legislation, just as a reminder for everyone, would have an AM radio receiver in every vehicle. It's free and it's available on the dashboard. And so where we are today, I smile because this is a conversation we've been talking about for several years now, but it's the support for this legislation is broad and bipartisan. Unlike a lot of other things that are happening in DC right now, but timing and floor strategy is our key right now. There are over 375 members of Congress in both the House and the Senate that support this. The bill has passed both committees of jurisdiction overwhelmingly. And so right now where it's sitting is sitting with really House leadership and Senate leadership to bring the bill to the floor. That's the next step. And that's what we're working on in DC. And, you know, my ask is for the state leadership conference, the ask when you go in to meet with the members and the staffs is, if they're already on the bill, thank them and ask them to nudge, help push or help promote the importance of the AM bill reaching the House floor and the Senate floor this session of Congress sooner rather than later. I'll add one more thing, just one more plug for Salem media. A couple of weeks ago, President Trump was on Salem's Hugh Hewitt nationally syndicated program and supported the bill. And we have been sharing that story. And that's another thing to mention when you're out on the Hill is that the president supports this bill, the White House supports this bill and this legislation.
Thank you, Nick. Excellent perspective. And we're all very hopeful that the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act will be voted on the House and Senate floor very soon. After this short message, we will discuss television ownership caps and revisit a radio issue that is 2 decades old, but as important as ever. Stick around.
This is Mark Moore, General Manager of Local Broadcast Sales. Stations everywhere are starving for practical ways to prepare their sales teams to impress local clients and prospects. Your partnership with LBS delivers exactly that, and you get the credit. 12 world-class member services under one umbrella, built to meet sellers where they are. Training, covered. Tools to get results, covered. New seller certification, covered. All through one powerful LBS partnership. Tell your members to create their free local broadcast sales account at localbroadcastsales.com today.
Welcome back to Broadcast Advocate. Shawn, earlier this week, NAB CEO Curtis Leggett was in front of the Senate Commerce Committee to discuss television ownership. What were the positive messages that came out of that hearing, and where do broadcasters go from here?
Yeah, it was a tremendous hearing and really the pinnacle of our advocacy to date on the ownership issue, particularly in front of Congress. And the committee was really focused on, as you mentioned, television ownership, and I would say the television ownership national cap of 39%. The really positive outcome of that was every member of Congress, while they maybe came to the issue from different perspectives, what was really unifying, just as it is in our communities, but unifying of the committee was an appreciation for what local broadcasters do in their communities. And so every member up and down the dais continued to echo this, fact-based journalism most trusted source of information in local communities, at a time when we're competing against not just big tech, but big tech owned generative AI. We're actually the ones with boots on the ground and on the air during these critical moments. So that in and of itself is huge, and it should give wind to the sails of everyone coming to the state leadership conference to tell that local story and local impact. But also what's changed in the marketplace. Members of Congress also fundamentally understood this reality because we're all living it as consumers. But NAB's CEO Curtis Leggett did a great job of highlighting we're competing for advertising against tech behemoths, Google, Facebook. We're competing for marquee programming. Look at Netflix, look at Amazon. And these companies are huge. They don't just have national scale, let alone more than 39% reach in the nation, but they have global scale. And so really the point was driven home of if you would like broadcasters to continue to compete for advertising, for programming, but to be able to invest that back into local newsrooms, we need a level playing field. And so I thought the committee did a great job of articulating all of those key points for us. We had support really where it counted in terms of the big picture of asking the FCC to update these rules, not Congress. The FCC has the authority and jurisdiction. We had great Republican support for that. And this is something that built on an event that happened the weekend prior to the hearing, which just as the president has supported AM radio, the president also publicly supports enabling, empowering local broadcasters in this media marketplace today that is so competitive, and the FCC updating these rules.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shawn. So Nick, from the newer issue of AM and Vehicles, we're going to switch topics and we're going to go to the longtime fight for broadcasters, and that's preventing a performance tax. So as radio broadcasters meet with legislators in Washington at their own stations or in their communities, what is the message on performance royalties?
Well, I would say the message is very straightforward. Radio already provides enormous promotional value for artists and record labels. Airplay drives discovery, ticket sales, streaming, fan engagement. That is the ecosystem that works for the industry and has, and for the music industry. Just last week, my wife heard that an artist was coming here to the Twin Cities in July, and a couple days later, we bought tickets. So it was because of the radio promotion that she heard it from. So, a new performance royalty on local radio stations. They hurt radio, local radio of all shapes and sizes, especially those ones in rural markets, faith-based stations that I represent at the NRB and at Salem, in niche formats, right? Already operating on very tight margins. There's a bigger policy point, though, in my opinion, and it kind of taps into the AM radio bill as well, and that is radio is free and universally accessible. Local radio operates on tight margins. When you add another layer of what could be a federal fee or an additional performance tax, stations as a former GM have to decide trade-offs on how stations are going to invest in the programming, in the talent, in the community service that they do. We're not arguing that artists shouldn't be paid. They absolutely should be, but there's a bunch of different revenue streams that they already get paid on in today's music ecosystem. Our goal is, and our concern is making sure that if there's a federal, adding a federal policy on a federal performance royalty on local radio would change the economic model that has supported over-the-air broadcasting for decades.
Nick, thank you so much. Shawn, the last issue is to you. Television broadcasters are turning to the future of television with NEXTGEN TV or ATSC 3.0. How do broadcasters push for the adoption of this standard in their advocacy?
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is a huge issue for TV broadcasters. If you pair it with ownership, I think the messaging for state leadership conference participants is, let us compete, let us innovate. We remain regulated at the FCC under the public interest standard, and we need the FCC's approval to move fully to the NEXTGEN TV standard or ATSC 3.0. this is a fun one to talk about with members of Congress. What does it mean? It means we are able to deliver a better product and service to their constituents for free over the air. So in an era where we're all having to buy more and more streaming subscription services, to see our favorite team, this is where it's a tremendous value proposition for consumers. It's better picture, better sound, better interactivity. And I'm really excited to talk about the public safety benefit of NEXTGEN TV. It's not just advanced emergency alerting, it's also the broadcast positioning system, which can be a complement and backup to our GPS system. So this is a known problem. Critical infrastructure like power, telecom, financial services, over-reliance on GPS as a source of authenticated time. And BPS, the broadcast positioning system, can be a really critical backup, whether it's from a natural event, a foreign adversary attack, jamming or spoofing that may just happen by accident. So really critical national security, public safety reason. It can only be unlocked to its fullest potential if we're able to make the full transition to ATSC 3.0. Participants, TV GMs, we're already covering a majority of the country with ATSC 3.0, but to make the full step to fully unlock these benefits, we need to make a full transition by a date certain to NEXTGEN TV, and the FCC can help us. They've taken significant steps in terms of their process, comment from stakeholders since participants were here in Washington last year, and now it's time to get this over the finish line and get a plan so that broadcasters and consumers and consumer electronic groups can work together to really bring this into reality.
Excellent. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Shawn and Nick. Thank you both so much for sharing some of your insights on broadcasters' important advocacy fights. Finally, if you could each take a shot at this one. So while broadcasters have 500 or more folks down in DC each year, there are many more opportunities for broadcasters to engage their legislators throughout the year. So how can broadcasters push the industry forward outside of SLC, and why is it so important to do it? Shawn, let's start with you.
Sure, I'm going to go into a radio example here. The Depend on AM campaign. Participate in these industry-wide efforts, whether it's on air, whether it's having your talent talk about these critical issues to their listeners, really engage with policymakers when they're in your stations, when they're in your backyards. State associations do a great job of organizing these meetings back home, but remember that this is not just a 1 week a year relationship. It's a year-round 52-week a year relationship, and ask the policymakers, what matters to you? What can we be doing to help you, to help the communities that we serve together?
Excellent. Nick?
Yeah, and I would add, I tell this to our GMs all the time within Salem and to our members at the NRB, invite your member of Congress and their staffs into your studio, into your station. Have them meet your front desk, have them meet your traffic department, have them meet your programming folks. Give them a tour of the studio, give them a tour of the control room, let them touch the equipment, show them the EAS equipment and how that, impacts a local community. If you're not involved in your state broadcast association, you should be. Our SBAs are incredible. I have a great relationship with so many of them, including many on this phone call. They're wonderful. And they're the eyes and ears in our backyards. And so they're the ones that are going to be helping you at a state level, at a local level, and then, of course, at a federal level. Invite members of Congress to your station events and your staffs. To your station events and to different opportunities to meet your listeners. And of course, on the flip side, go to the town halls, participate in local roundtables as a broadcaster, send your political reporter out or a news person out. These are the things that help shape the conversation. There's an old saying in DC, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And we have to be able to tell our story. And we're the only ones that can tell our story. And it's important because we live our story every day, but we also tell it about our community.
Thank you both so much. We would like to thank Shawn Donilon from the NAB and Nick Anderson of Salem Media and the National Religious Broadcasters for joining us on this month's episode of Broadcast Advocate. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. To learn more about the National Alliance of State Broadcasters Associations, visit our website, nasbaonline.net. For Wendy Paulson, I'm Chris Winkle. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay tuned for the next episode of Broadcast Advocate.